A 4-year-old homeless girl sees a millionaire getting beaten up by 5 men on a country road, but she grabs a broom handle and does something incredible. Watch until the end. You won't regret it. Comment on what you think will happen. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. The scream echoed through the dirt road like a tear in the silence of the afternoon in rural Oklahoma. Lily, just 4 years old, dropped the moldy piece of bread she had found near the abandoned gas station and ran towards the sound. Her bare feet pounded against the dry ground, kicking up a cloud of reddish dust that clung to her tanned skin. The faded pink dress, her only possession besides a headless rag doll, swayed as she moved with the agility of someone who had learned to survive on the streets. What she saw made her stop suddenly, her small heart beating unevenly in her thin chest. 5 men surrounded a man in a navy blue suit who was lying on the ground trying to protect his face with his bloodied hands. The kicks came from all sides, accompanied by words that the girl didn't fully understand, but that carried a rage that made her tremble. "Just pay what you owe, you miserable wretch," shouted the tallest, a guy with a scruffy beard and dirty plaid shirt. "The boss is losing patience with you." Richard Montgomery, owner of the Montgomery supermarkets chain that supplied 3 counties in the region, tried to breathe between the blows. At 52 years old, he had never imagined that his financial problems would lead him there, to a deserted road in the outskirts of Tulsa, Oklahoma. The racing heart wasn't just from fear, a condition he kept in absolute secret from everyone, including his wife Valerie, caused stressful situations to become dangerous. "Please," he managed to murmur between kicks, "I just need more time. The money will be in the account next week." "Time's up, old man," growled another assailant, this one wearing a dirty baseball cap and tattoos on his arms. Benny was very clear. Either you pay today, or... That's when they saw the girl. Lily had picked up a broken broom handle that someone had thrown nearby and was approaching the men with a determination that contrasted frighteningly with her diminutive size. "Stop hurting the man!" she shouted, her thin voice cutting through the air like a blade. "You are bad, very bad." The 5 men looked at each other, surprised. What was a child doing there, alone, in that desolate place? But before they could fully process the situation, Lily was already among them, swinging the broom handle with all the strength her small hands could muster. "Get out of here, you brat!" The bearded man tried to push her away, but Lily dodged nimbly and landed a well-aimed blow on his shin. "Ow! This girl is crazy!" he bellowed, hopping on one leg. Richard, even lying down and in pain, watched the scene with a mixture of astonishment and gratitude. That child, who clearly lived on the streets, judging by her appearance, was risking everything to defend him. It didn't make any sense, but it was happening before his eyes. "You're no good!" Lily continued to shout, now aiming at the man in the cap. "My mom used to say that whoever hits others goes to hell." The mention of her mother made something strange happen in Richard's chest. Even through the pain, he noticed something in the girl's voice, a deep longing, a pain that shouldn't exist in someone so small. The aggressors, visibly uncomfortable with the situation, began to back away. Beating an adult man was one thing, but doing it in front of a child who confronted them with such courage was something even they couldn't stomach. "This isn't over, Montgomery," shouted the group leader as he walked away. "Benny won't be happy to hear you didn't bring the money, and this time there won't be any little girl to save you." When the men finally left in an old pickup truck, kicking up even more dust, Lily dropped the broom handle and approached Richard. The businessman was trying to get up, but the pain in his ribs and the dizziness caused by his heart problems prevented him. "You're hurt real bad," she mumbled, crouching down next to him. "Do you want me to call someone?" "What's your name, little one?" Richard managed to ask, impressed by the kindness in the girl's voice after so much bravery. "Lily, and you?" "Richard, Lily, you saved me." The girl smiled. but it was a sad smile, filled with a melancholy that didn't match her 4 years. My mom always said I had to help those who were suffering. She used to sing a song about it. Is your mom at home waiting for you? Lily's smile disappeared completely. She's gone. A long time ago. Now I live on the street. Richard felt a pang in his chest that had nothing to do with his heart condition. Alone. Sometimes Aunt Marlene from the church gives me food, but I'm mostly alone. At that moment, under the harsh sun of rural Oklahoma, with the taste of blood in his mouth and his body aching, Richard Montgomery made a decision that would forever change not only his life, but also the destiny of that courageous girl who had risked everything to save him without asking for anything in return. 3 hours after the incident on the road, Richard Montgomery arrived at the municipal hospital in Tulsa, Oklahoma. His body still sore and his mind disturbed by the image of the girl who had disappeared as soon as he managed to stand up. Lily had simply walked away, saying she needed to find supper, leaving him there alone with 1,000 unanswered questions. "Mr. Montgomery, are you sure you don't want to file a police report?" insisted the nurse as she cleaned a cut on his forehead. "These injuries are serious." "I'm sure," Richard replied, avoiding the woman's gaze. How could he explain that the beating was related to debts that even his wife didn't know existed? It was just a misunderstanding. What Richard didn't know was that, at that very moment, Benny Carvalho was in his office in downtown Tulsa, anxiously awaiting the phone call that would confirm that the lesson had been taught. At 48 years old, Richard's partner for over a decade, Benny had become a man that his own friend would no longer recognize. "So?" he asked as he answered his cell phone. "We had a little problem, boss," came the voice of the bearded man on the other end of the line. "A little girl appeared out of nowhere and interfered, but the message was sent." "Girl? What girl?" "A street urchin. Can't be more than 4, 5 years old. Blonde, all dirty. She faced all 5 of us with a broom handle." Benny frowned. A child had thwarted his plans. Worse, a witness who could identify his henchman. "And you let her get away?" "Well, boss, we weren't going to hurt a child." "Idiots!" Benny exploded. "If she saw you, she could cause problems. Find out who this girl is." Meanwhile, on the other side of town, in a simple 2-bedroom house, Valerie Montgomery was preparing dinner without knowing that her husband was in the hospital. At 45 years old, she maintained the careful appearance of someone who was once considered one of the most beautiful women in the region. But her eyes carried a deep sadness that no makeup could disguise. She opened the bathroom cabinet and took the small bottle of prescription medication she hid behind the cleaning supplies. 2 pills for anxiety, 3 to sleep, 1 for depression. The routine had been established for so long that she no longer remembered what it was like to live without them. What Richard never knew was that the inability to have children, which Valerie always claimed, was a lie built on a pain she couldn't share. 5 years ago, she had lost a baby in the 5th month of pregnancy. The pain was so great that she simply decided she would never try again, preferring that her husband believe the problem was physical, not emotional. On the other side of town, in a small house attached to the Sacred Heart Church, Marlene Santos was finishing organizing the donations for the winter clothing drive when she heard small footsteps at the door. At 61 years old, she dedicated her retirement to volunteer work, especially caring for the homeless children who appeared in the area. "Lily, honey, where were you today?" she asked as she saw the girl standing in the doorway, dirtier than usual. "I had to help a man who was getting beat up," Lily replied naturally, as if saving strangers was part of her daily routine. "What do you mean, getting beat up?" "Some bad men were hitting him, so I grabbed a stick and told them to stop." Marlene felt a chill in her stomach. She had known Lily for almost 2 years, since the girl had appeared in town, seemingly alone and with no memory of her own past. Several residents helped as they could, but no one had been able to find out where she came from or what had happened to her family. Lily, that's the kind of dangerous situation you should avoid, Marlene said, crouching down to be at the child's height. You could have gotten hurt. But I couldn't let them hurt Mr. Montgomery. He seemed really nice. Montgomery? Richard Montgomery? Do you know him? Marlene knew him, yes. Everyone in town knew the owner of Montgomery's supermarkets. But what intrigued her most was the different glow in Lily's eyes when she spoke of him. In 2 years, she had never seen the girl show so much interest in a strange adult. Did you like him? I liked him. He has sad eyes like mine, and he said thank you when I helped. At that moment, Marlene had no way of knowing that her words would plant a dangerous seed in Lily's mind. The girl, who had spent years without any consistent father or mother figure in her life, had found someone who awakened in her a feeling she didn't know how to name. Meanwhile, Richard was finally arriving home, making up some excuse about having fallen off a ladder in the warehouse to explain his injuries to Valerie, but his mind couldn't get away from the image of the courageous girl who had saved him. Valerie, he said as she tended to a cut on his arm, have you heard of any homeless children here in town? Some people talk about a little girl who showed up a while ago. Why? Richard hesitated. How to explain that a 4-year-old child had shown more courage and compassion than many adults he knew? How to say that he had been saved by someone who lived in conditions he couldn't even imagine? Just curious, he lied. But while Valerie finished tending to his injuries, Richard was already planning how to find Lily again. There was something in those big, sad eyes that had touched him deeply. Maybe it was gratitude, maybe it was guilt for his own comfortable situation, contrasting with the girl's misery. Or maybe it was something deeper that he didn't yet understand. What he didn't know was that, at that very moment, Lily was lying on a piece of cardboard behind the central bakery, looking at the stars and humming softly a song she claimed to have learned from her mother. A song about never giving up, about being strong even when everything seemed lost. And she also didn't know that Benny Carvalho was on the other side of town, planning how to deal with the child witness who had thwarted his plans, without imagining that this same child was about to trigger a series of events that would shake everything he had built through lies and betrayals. 5 days after the incident on the road, Richard Montgomery couldn't get Lily out of his head. During meetings at the company, while reviewing financial reports or attending suppliers, the image of the courageous girl came back like an obsession he couldn't explain. There was something about that child that stirred feelings he thought he had buried a long time ago. On Tuesday morning, he made a decision that would change everything. Instead of going straight to the office, he drove through the streets of downtown Tulsa looking for Lily. It wasn't hard to find her. She was sitting on the sidewalk in front of the drugstore, playing with her headless doll and humming softly. "Hi, Lily," he said, parking the car and approaching slowly. The girl raised her eyes and a huge smile lit up her face. "Mr. Montgomery, are you okay from your boo-boos?" "I'm fine, thanks to you." He crouched down beside her. "What are you doing here?" "Waiting for the drugstore to open." "Sometimes the lady gives me a piece of bread." Richard's heart ached. "Are you hungry?" "I'm always hungry," she replied naturally, without a hint of self-pity. "How about we have breakfast together?" Lily's eyes widened. "For real?" "For real." 20 minutes later, they were sitting in the central bakery, Lily devouring a pastry and a glass of warm milk, while Richard watched her with a mixture of fascination and pain. The girl ate with a hunger that spoke of many missed meals, but her manners were curiously delicate for someone who lived on the street. "Lily, do you remember anything about your family?" he asked carefully. The girl stopped chewing and became thoughtful. "Sometimes I remember a woman who used to sing to me. She smelled like flowers and had soft hands, but I don't know if it was my mom or if I dreamed it." "And you don't remember how you got here in town?" "No." Aunt Marlene said I showed up one day, all hurt and didn't remember anything. I only knew my name. Richard made a mental note to talk to Marlene. There was something strange about this story, and he felt he needed to find out the truth about Lily's past. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Benny Carvalho was in a meeting that no one else in the company knew existed. In his private office, he received Jacob Silva, an accountant who for 2 years had been helping him to mask the embezzlement of money from Montgomery's supermarkets. "The situation is getting complicated, Benny," said Jacob, a thin man with thick glasses. "Richard is asking to review all the balance sheets from the last few months. If he hires an external auditor—" "He's not hiring anything," Benny interrupted. "Richard has too many problems to worry about auditing." "What kind of problems? Leave it to me. The important thing is for you to keep doing your part. And there's one more thing. I need you to dig up some information about a homeless girl who roams around town. Blonde, about 4 years old, named Lily." "What for?" "Nothing that concerns you. Just find out." What Benny didn't count on was that his obsession with controlling every aspect of the situation was leading him down a dangerous path. 2 years ago, when he started siphoning money from the company, it was just to cover some unsuccessful personal investments. But his addiction to betting on horses had turned small loans into a constant drain on Montgomery's coffers. Even worse, he had discovered that selling information about suppliers and competitors to other supermarket chains in the region yielded a considerable extra buck. What began as desperation had become a web of corruption that he no longer knew how to stop. Meanwhile, Valerie Montgomery woke up to another day trying to find meaning in her own existence. The prescription medications had become her only way to cope with the pain of the loss she never shared with her husband. 5 years after losing the baby, she still woke up some nights thinking she heard a child crying in the house. That morning, while preparing coffee, she noticed that Richard was different, more thoughtful, more distant. During their 15-year marriage, she had learned to read the signs when he was worried about the company, but this time it was something else. "Richard, is everything okay?" she asked as he stirred his coffee distractedly. "Everything's fine," he replied automatically. "Just some problems at the company." But Valerie knew her husband too well to believe it. There was something in his eyes that she couldn't decipher, a restlessness that had nothing to do with money or business. At the Sacred Heart Church, Marlene Santos was preparing the day's activities when she received an unexpected visitor. Richard Montgomery was standing at the door with an expression that mixed determination and nervousness. "Good morning, Marlene. Can we talk?" "Of course, Richard. Come in." They sat down in the small office attached to the church, and Richard went straight to the point. "I wanted to ask about the girl, Lily. She told me you take care of her sometimes." Marlene narrowed her eyes. "May I ask why the interest?" Richard hesitated. How to explain that a 4-year-old child had touched him in a way he couldn't understand? "She helped me in a difficult situation. I want to return the favor." "What kind of help?" "That doesn't matter. What matters is that I found out she lives on the streets, goes hungry, has no family. That's not right." Marlene watched Richard carefully. In the 2 years she had been caring for Lily, no adult had shown real interest in the girl's situation. Most gave a coin here, a piece of bread there, but no one had cared enough to ask questions. "Richard, Lily is not an ordinary child. When she showed up here almost 2 years ago, she was in shock. She didn't remember anything about her past, only her own name. We tried to find her family, but it was impossible. And no one ever came looking for her. No one. It's as if she appeared out of nowhere. But that's not normal. A child doesn't just appear in a town without someone missing them." Marlene sighed. "I know. I always thought there was something strange about her story. But without documents, without records, without anyone looking, what could we do?" Richard stood up, a new determination shining in his eyes. "You could have done more, and I will." "What do you intend to do?" I'm going to find out where she came from. And in the meantime, I'm going to make sure she has food, clean clothes, and a safe place to sleep." Marlene was silent for a moment. "Richard, are you sure about what you're doing? Taking care of a child is no joke. And Lily, she has issues. Sometimes she goes days without speaking. Other times she has terrible nightmares. She's not a normal child." "No child who's been through what she's been through would be normal," Richard replied. "But that doesn't mean she doesn't deserve a chance." When Richard left the church, he didn't know that his words had planted a seed of hope in Marlene's heart. For the first time in 2 years, someone was willing to fight for Lily. But she also didn't know that, on the other side of town, dark forces were already moving to find out more about the girl who had become an unwanted piece in a very dangerous game. A week after his conversation with Marlene, Richard had established a routine that was beginning to worry Valerie. Every day, before going to the company, he stopped downtown to take care of some personal business, as he said vaguely when she asked. What Valerie didn't know was that these personal affairs involved making sure Lily had at least one decent meal a day. That Thursday morning, he found the girl in the same place as always, sitting on the sidewalk in front of the drugstore. But this time, she wasn't alone. A suspicious-looking man, wearing a dirty plaid shirt, was talking to her in a way that made the alarm go off in Richard's head. "We just want to know if you remember anything about that day on the road," said the man, whom Richard immediately recognized as one of his attackers. "I don't remember anything," Lily replied, clearly uncomfortable. "I didn't do anything wrong." Richard approached quickly, his heart racing not only from anger, but also from the heart condition that caused him to feel chest pains in moments of stress. "Excuse me, what's going on here?" The man turned around, and the recognition was mutual and immediate. "Oh, if it isn't Montgomery himself. What a coincidence." "Mr. Montgomery!" exclaimed Lily, running to hide behind him. "This man is asking strange questions." "You can leave," Richard said, placing himself protectively in front of the girl. "Now." "Hold on, boss. I was just talking to the girl. Didn't know you two were friends." "We are. And if I see you near her again, I'm calling the cops." The man laughed, but it was a forced laugh. "Cops? I don't think you want to involve the cops in your affairs, Montgomery. The boss wouldn't like that at all." After the guy walked away, Richard knelt in front of Lily, who was visibly trembling. "It's okay, he won't bother you anymore." Why did he want to know about that day? "It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're safe." Richard paused, making a decision he had been mulling over for days. "Lily, how about you come spend a few days at my house?" The girl's eyes widened. "At your house? For real?" "For real. You'd have your own room, food whenever you're hungry, hot showers. And your wife? Won't she be mad?" Richard hesitated. That was the tricky part. He hadn't told Valerie about Lily yet, and he didn't know how she would react. But after what he had just witnessed, he couldn't leave the girl alone on the street anymore. "Leave it to me. She'll love you." Meanwhile, in the office of Montgomery Supermarkets, Benny was receiving the report from his henchman with growing irritation. "You did what I told you not to do," he exploded on the phone. "I said to observe the girl, not to interrogate her." "Sorry, boss, but she wasn't going to talk anyway. And there's another problem. Montgomery showed up. Seems like they're close." Benny felt a chill in his stomach. If Richard had gotten close to the girl, that could complicate everything. Not only because she was a witness, but because any deeper investigation into her past could lead to discoveries he preferred to keep buried. "Keep your distance for now," he ordered, "but keep watching. And find out what the relationship is between Montgomery and that child." What Benny didn't know was that his paranoia was about to set in motion a series of events that would reveal secrets much deeper than he imagined. At the Montgomery's house, Valerie was in the bathroom taking her medication when she heard the sound of her husband's car arriving. It was only 2 in the afternoon, too early for him to be back from the office. She quickly put away the bottles and went to the living room window. What she saw left her completely paralyzed. Richard was getting out of the car accompanied by a small blonde girl who was holding a headless doll. The child was looking at the house with a mixture of fascination and nervousness while Richard spoke softly to her. Valerie felt the world spin. For a moment, it was as if she were seeing the ghost of the child she had lost 5 years ago. The girl was about the age he would be today, the light hair, the big eyes. "Valerie," said Richard as he entered, "I need to talk to you. This is Lily." "Hi, Mom," the girl said timidly. "Your house is very pretty." Valerie couldn't speak. The child's voice, sweet and musical, echoed in the house that had only known silence for years. It was as if all the pain she had buried under the medication was coming back all at once. "Valerie," Richard insisted, worried about his wife's expression. "Are you okay?" I need to sit down," she mumbled, walking to the sofa on shaky legs. Richard approached, leaving Lily exploring the room with childish curiosity. "I can explain. Lily is a girl who lives on the street, has no family. She helped me in a difficult situation and I thought we could take care of her for a while." "Take care of her?" "Temporarily. Until we find a permanent solution." Valerie looked at Lily, who had found a picture on the shelf and was examining it carefully. It was a photo of the couple taken years ago when they still dreamed of having children. "Ma'am, you look very pretty in this photo," Lily commented innocently. "You look happy." The girl's words were like a stab in Valerie's heart. "You look happy. In the past, when there was still hope." "Richard, I need to talk to you, alone," she said, standing up. "Lily, how about you stay here in the living room? There are some books on the shelf you can look at." In the bedroom, away from the girl's ears, Valerie exploded. "Have you gone crazy? You can't just bring a child home without consulting me." "Valerie, she was in danger. I couldn't leave her on the street." "And since when do you care about street children? We've been passing them in town for years and you've never lifted a finger." Richard didn't know how to explain. How to say that Lily had stirred something inside him that he didn't even know existed. How to tell her about the beating, about the problems with Benny, about all the mess his life had become. "It's different. This girl is special." "Special how?" "She saved me, Valerie, literally saved me." Valerie stopped pacing. "What are you talking about?" And then Richard told her everything. The beating, the financial problems, Lily's courage in facing it alone. He told her about the debts he had hidden, about the threats he had been receiving, about how a 4-year-old child had shown more bravery than he had in his entire adult life. When he finished, Valerie was sitting on the bed, tears streaming down her face. "Why didn't you ever tell me about the company's problems?" "Because I didn't want to worry you." "And now? Are we bankrupt?" "I don't know. Maybe. But that's not the most important thing now. The important thing is that this girl needs us." Valerie looked through the half-open door. Lily was sitting on the living room floor, flipping through a photo book and humming softly a melody that sounded strangely familiar. "What's that song she's singing?" Valerie asked. Richard listened. It was a song about not giving up, about finding light in the darkness. A song that spoke of hope, even in the most difficult moments. "I don't know." She said she learned it from her mother. That's when something clicked in Valerie's mind. The melody, the girl's age, the light hair. There was something too familiar to be a coincidence. But she needed to be sure before saying anything. 3 days after Lily arrived at the Montgomery's house, the household routine had changed completely. The girl woke up early, always humming the same mysterious melody, and followed Richard around the house like a small, affectionate shadow. For Valerie, each moment was a mixture of pain and a strange sense of completeness that she hadn't felt in years. "Ma'am, Valerie, can I help you make lunch?" Lily asked that morning, climbing onto a chair to reach the kitchen sink. "Of course, my dear," Valerie replied, trying to control the emotion in her voice. Seeing those small hands helping with the dishes reminded her painfully of all the moments she had dreamed of living with the son she lost. While Lily played with the detergent foam, Valerie took the opportunity to ask the question that had been tormenting her for days. "Lily, that song you always sing, where did you learn it?" "From the lady with soft hands," the girl replied naturally. "She sang it when I was sad. Said the song scared away the monsters. Do you remember what she was like?" Lily stopped playing and became thoughtful. "Smelled like white flowers, had hair like mine but longer, and she cried a lot when she thought I was asleep." Valerie's heart raced. The description was too vague to be sure, but there were details that bothered her deeply. "Did she call you by any special name?" "She called me... Lily frowned, concentrating. "I don't remember exactly, but it wasn't Lily." At that moment the phone rang, interrupting the conversation. It was Marlene from the church. "Valerie, can I speak to Richard? He's gone to the office." "Did something happen?" "It's about Lily. A woman showed up at the church today asking about a missing girl. The description she gave..." Valerie felt her blood run cold. "What kind of description?" "Blonde hair, green eyes, a small birthmark on her left arm, and she sang a specific song about never giving up." Valerie's legs buckled. She leaned on the kitchen table, watching Lily, who continued to play, oblivious to the conversation. "That woman, did she say her name?" "Connie Silver. She lives in a neighboring town and works as a cleaning lady. She said she's been looking for her daughter for almost 2 years." "Connie," Valerie murmured, and suddenly everything made sense. "Marlene, don't say anything to that woman yet. I need to talk to Richard first." After hanging up, Valerie watched Lily for long minutes. The girl had stopped playing and was now humming her song again, but this time Valerie paid complete attention to the lyrics. "When the dark night comes and fear wants to grab me, I will remember your voice that taught me to be fast." It was the same song that Connie Silver used to sing when she worked at the orphanage. The same woman Valerie had supervised during her months as a volunteer 5 years ago. The same woman who had lost her daughter under mysterious circumstances shortly after Valerie stopped working there because of her own loss. Meanwhile, in the office of Montgomery Supermarkets, Richard was facing a crisis that went far beyond the problems with Benny. The numbers just didn't add up, and he was beginning to suspect that the embezzlement was greater than he imagined. "Jacob," he called, making the accountant jump. "I need you to show me all the balance sheets from the last 2 years. I want to review everything." "But Mr. Montgomery, that's going to be a lot of work." "I don't care. I want to see where the company's money is leaking." What Richard didn't know was that, at that very moment, Jacob was sending an urgent message to Benny. "He wants to review everything. We're screwed." The answer came immediately. "Stay calm. I'll take care of it." Benny hung up the phone and walked to the window of his office, watching the movement on the street. The situation was getting out of control quickly. First the girl witness, then Richard getting close to her, now an audit of the books. It was as if everything was conspiring against him. He picked up the phone and made a call. "I need you to do a more definitive job this time." "What kind of job?" "The kind that solves problems permanently. But it has to look like an accident." On the other end of the line, there was hesitation. "Boss, it's one thing to throw a few punches, another thing is..." "Is what? Are you going to do it or not?" "We'll think about it." Benny hung up, irritated. It was becoming clear that his henchman didn't have the stomach for what the situation demanded. He would need to find other options. Back at the Montgomery's house, Valerie had made a decision. When Richard came home from work, she would tell him everything about her suspicion regarding Lily's real identity. But first, she needed to be absolutely sure. "Lily, come here for a minute," she called, taking the girl to the living room sofa. "Did I do something wrong, Mom?" "No, honey. I just want to ask you some questions. Do you remember ever living somewhere before you showed up here in town?" Lily was quiet for a moment, as if she was trying to reach very distant memories. Sometimes I dream of a place with lots of kids. It had a big yard and a mean lady who yelled a lot. And was the lady with soft hands there? I think so. But she got very sad one day and then disappeared. Then I was alone with the other kids. Valerie felt tears welling up. The description matched perfectly with the orphanage where she had worked. And do you remember leaving that place? I remember being in a car with a man who smelled bad. He said he was going to take me to a new family, but then there was a very loud noise, and I woke up in a hospital. Then nobody knew who I was. An accident, Valerie murmured, the pieces of the puzzle fitting together in her mind. Ma'am, why are you crying? Valerie hugged Lily tightly. Because sometimes crying is the only way to express very big feelings, honey. At that moment, she heard Richard's car arriving. It was time to tell everything and face the consequences. But before she could get up, the doorbell rang. At the door was a man she didn't know, thin, nervous, with an envelope in his hand. Mrs. Montgomery, I'm a process server. I have a summons for your husband. Valerie took the envelope with trembling hands. When she opened it, she read something that made her blood run cold. Action for search and seizure of a minor in irregular situation, requested by Connie Silver, biological mother proven through DNA test. What do you mean DNA? She asked the officer. Nobody did any test. According to the documents, the applicant presented hairs from the child collected during a visit to the residence. The test confirms kinship. Valerie turned towards the inside of the house, where Lily continued on the sofa, now playing with her headless doll. Lily, was anyone here yesterday when I wasn't? The cleaning lady came. She thought my hair was very pretty and asked to cut a tiny little strand. She said she was going to make a doll just like me. The world collapsed on Valerie. The woman she had hired to clean had been sent by Connie. Everything had been planned to get Lily's genetic material without raising suspicion. When Richard arrived and saw his wife in a panic at the door, holding official documents, he knew immediately that his peaceful life had come to an end. The court summons fell from Richard's hands like a silent bomb. He read the documents 3 times before he could fully process what was happening. Connie Silver, Lily's biological mother, had obtained a search and seizure order based on a DNA test that proved kinship. "How is this possible?" he murmured, looking at Valerie, who was crying silently, leaning against the wall. "I need to tell you something," she said with a choked voice. "About Lily, about me, about everything." They sat down in the kitchen, away from Lily, who was playing in the living room, oblivious to the drama unfolding around her. Valerie took a deep breath and began to tell the truth she had kept for 5 years. "After we lost the baby, I couldn't stay at home without going crazy. So I started working as a volunteer at the Santa Clara orphanage in the neighboring town. That's where I met Connie Silver." Richard watched her, trying to understand where this was going. Connie was one of the most dedicated employees, officially a cleaning lady, but in practice she took care of the children as if they were her own. There was a little girl there, blonde hair, who she treated in a special way. The child's name on the record was different, but Connie always called her Lily. "Are you saying that—" "I'm saying that I always knew that our Lily was Connie's daughter. From the first day she entered this house, I recognized everything, the song she sings, the gestures, even the way she tilts her head when she's thoughtful." Richard stood up abruptly, pacing back and forth. "And you didn't tell me. For 5 days, you let me get attached to that child, knowing she had a mother looking for her?" "Because I didn't want to lose her," Valerie exploded. "Because after 5 years living with the emptiness of not having been able to save my own child, Lily appeared in our lives like a miracle, and I couldn't accept that we would have to give her back." "Give her back? Valerie, she's not ours. Never was ours." "But she could have been," Valerie whispered. "If you knew how much Connie suffered when Lily disappeared from the orphanage. The girl was supposed to be adopted by a family from Oklahoma City, But on the day of the transfer, the car that was taking her had an accident. Connie spent months in the hospital, recovering from her injuries, and when she finally managed to look for her daughter, she discovered that she had disappeared without a trace. Richard stopped walking. What kind of accident? The social worker who was accompanying the transfer was drunk. He crashed the car into a tree. He died instantly, but Lily survived. But when she arrived at the hospital, she had a head trauma and total memory loss. Since she had no documents, they burned in the accident, no one was able to identify her. And she ended up on the streets of Tulsa. Apparently. Connie never stopped looking. Visited dozens of towns, showed photos in every hospital, every police station, until someone informed her about a blonde girl who lived on the streets here. At that moment, a small voice interrupted the tense conversation. "Mr. Montgomery, why are you fighting?" Lily was standing at the kitchen door, holding her headless doll, her big eyes full of worry. Seeing that innocent child who had gone through so much suffering without even remembering broke Richard's heart. "We're not fighting, honey," he said, crouching down to be at her height. "We're just talking about adult things. Are you sad because of me?" "Never," Valerie replied quickly, wiping away the tears. "You brought joy to our house. Then why is there official paper on the table? When official paper shows up, the kids always have to leave." Lily's observation revealed a frightening maturity. How many times had she witnessed scenes like this in the orphanage? How many painful goodbyes had she seen, even without consciously remembering? It was then that the doorbell rang again. This time, there were two women at the door, a process server and a social worker. Behind them, nervous but determined, was a woman of approximately 30 years, blonde hair like Lily's, green eyes full of contained tears. "Connie," Valerie murmured, recognizing her immediately. "Mr. and Mrs. "Montgomery," said the officer, "I have come to comply with the search and seizure order. The minor Lily must be immediately handed over to her biological mother." Connie Silver took a step forward, her hands trembling visibly. "Please, I just want to see my daughter. I didn't come here to cause problems, but—" Her voice trailed off when she saw Lily appearing behind Richard, curious about the movement at the door. Mother and daughter stared at each other for long seconds, two strangers who shared the same blood and the same pain. "Lily," Connie whispered, tears streaming freely down her face. "My little Lily." The girl tilted her head to the side, studying the woman's face carefully. "Do you know me?" "I do, yes. I am your mother." Lily looked at Valerie, then at Richard, confused. "But Mom, Valerie and Mr. Montgomery take care of me now." "I know, honey. And they took very good care of you, but now Mommy has come to get you. Are you the lady with soft hands?" Lily asked, taking a small step forward. Connie knelt down, extending her hands. "I am, yes. Do you remember our song?" And then, to everyone's surprise, Connie began to sing the same melody that Lily hummed every day. But this time, the girl didn't accompany. Instead, she ran behind Richard, hiding. "I don't want to leave," she said, her voice small but firm. "This is my home now." The silence that followed was devastating. Connie stopped singing, her face contorted by the pain of seeing her daughter afraid of her. Valerie covered her mouth to stifle a sob. Richard felt his heart breaking to see two women who loved Lily suffering in different ways. "Mrs. Silver," said the social worker, "perhaps a gradual transition would be best. The child is clearly adapted to the current environment." "No," said Connie firmly, getting up. "I've already lost 2 years of my daughter's life. I'm not going to lose another day." It was then that Richard took an action that no one expected. "Connie, can I talk to you in private?" They moved a few feet away from the door, leaving Lily with Valerie under the watchful eye of the authorities. "I know you're her mother," Richard said softly, "and I know you have every legal right to take her. But look at her. Look how scared she is. Do you really think that snatching her away from here today is the best thing for her? And you think leaving her with strangers is better? We're not strangers. We're the people who took care of her when no one else cared. We're who she calls family now." Connie closed her eyes, the pain etched on her face. "You don't understand. I spent 2 years looking for her. 2 years blaming myself for not being able to protect her. 2 years sleeping on the floor of factories and family homes to raise money and hire a lawyer to help me find her. And now you've found her. But she doesn't remember you. To her, you're a stranger. Then I'm going to make her remember. I'm going to recover the lost time." At that moment, a car stopped abruptly in front of the house. Benny Carvalho got out, accompanied by 2 men Richard recognized as his attackers from the road. The situation, which was already complicated, was about to become dangerous. Benny's arrival transformed the tense situation into something potentially explosive. He got out of the car with the confidence of someone who thought he had all the cards in his hand, but stopped abruptly when he saw the authorities at Richard's door. "How interesting," he said, approaching the group. "Looks like I arrived just in time to watch the show." "Benny, what are you doing here?" Richard asked, instinctively positioning himself between his former partner and Lily. "I came to resolve our financial issues, dear friend, but I see you have bigger problems now." His eyes fixed on Connie, and then on the girl behind Richard. "So this is the famous witness who has been causing so much trouble." The officer frowned. "Sir, this is a family matter. Please leave." "Family matter?" Benny laughed. "How funny, because I have very interesting information about this family you're trying to reunite." Connie took a step forward, realizing that something was wrong. "What kind of information?" Benny pulled an envelope from his pocket, clearly pleased with the dramatic effect. "Information about how your daughter really disappeared from the Santa Clara orphanage, and about who was behind the illegal adoption scheme that operated there." The silence that followed was absolute. Even Lily stopped moving behind Richard, as if she felt the tension in the air. "What are you talking about?" Connie asked, her voice almost a whisper. "I'm talking about the fact that the accident that separated you from your daughter was not an accident. It was sabotage. Someone wanted that transfer to go wrong, and they succeeded." Valerie paled. "That's impossible. I was there when it all happened. I saw Connie's despair. I saw how she suffered." "Oh, Valerie," said Benny with a cruel smile. "You were there indeed. And that's exactly why you know I'm telling the truth." Richard felt a chill in his stomach. "Benny, get to the point. What do you want?" "I want you to stop poking around in the company's books. I want you to accept that our partnership is over and that you pay me the share you owe me. And I want that girl to stop being a problem." "What do you mean, stop being a problem?" asked the social worker, clearly alarmed. It was then that Connie had a flash of memory that made her tremble. "Wait, I know you. You were at the orphanage a few times, talking to the director, always bringing documents." "Very good, Connie. I did go there sometimes, at the request of clients who wanted adoptions. Let's say, more flexible." The truth began to form in everyone's mind like a macabre puzzle. Benny wasn't just embezzling money from Richard's company. He was involved in a much larger and dirtier scheme. "You were selling children," said Valerie, horror in her voice. "I was facilitating adoptions for families who couldn't go through the traditional legal process. For a fair price, of course." "And Lily?" "Lily was supposed to go to a very wealthy family in Oklahoma City. They paid a fortune for a blonde girl with green eyes. But on the way," Benny shrugged, "accidents happen." Connie lunged towards him, but was restrained by the officer. "You destroyed our lives. You destroyed my daughter's life." "I destroyed? Who works as a cleaning lady to this day because she couldn't overcome the loss? Who spent 2 years sleeping anywhere to save money?" "You did this to yourself, Connie." It was at that moment that Lily came out from behind Richard and approached Benny, her big eyes fixed on his face. "You are a bad man," she said with the devastating simplicity of childhood. "Like the men who beat up Mr. Montgomery." "Ah, so you remember me," said Benny, crouching down to be at her height. "How convenient." "Get away from her," Richard shouted, but Benny raised his hand, signaling for his henchman to approach. "Calm down, Montgomery. I'm just talking to the girl. Aren't I, Lily? Do you remember me from the orphanage too?" Lily tilted her head, concentrating. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes, a fragment of memory trying to emerge. You made the children cry." "I did what was necessary to make the business work, including making sure certain transfers went wrong when it was convenient. Did you have Mr. Montgomery beaten up because he was going to find out your evil deeds?" Lily's innocent question revealed a connection that no one had made until then. Benny wasn't just collecting money from Richard. He was trying to silence him before he discovered the full extent of his corruption. "Very smart, this girl," said Benny, standing up. "Too smart for her own good." It was then that Connie fully understood the situation. "You want to hurt my daughter. I want to solve problems. And your daughter became a problem the moment she saved Montgomery from that educational beating." The tension reached a critical point. The authorities present realized they were in the middle of something much bigger than a custody dispute. Benny's henchmen positioned themselves strategically, cutting off possible escape routes. "Benny," said Richard, trying to stay calm, "you're in front of law enforcement officials. Anything you do here will have consequences." "Consequences? Dear friend, I've spent the last 2 years building an empire based on making consequences disappear. You think 2 public servants are going to scare me?" It was at that moment that Valerie took an action that surprised everyone. She stepped forward and stood in front of Benny, a fierce determination in her eyes that no one had seen before. "Enough," she said, with a voice that cut through the air like a blade. "Enough lies, enough manipulation, enough of you destroying families for your own benefit. Valerie, don't get involved in this." "I'm already involved. I've been involved since the day I worked at that orphanage and saw children disappearing without explanation. Since the day you showed up there with your false documents and your promises of easy money." Benny lost some of his composure. "You have no proof of anything." "Don't I? Then why are you here, threatening an innocent child in front of authorities? Why did you bring henchmen if your conscience is clear?" At that moment, Lily did something that no one expected. She began to sing her song again, but this time with slightly different lyrics, as if long-buried memories were resurfacing. "When the bad man comes and tries to hurt me, I will remember the good woman who taught me not to cry." Connie covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. It was a version of the song she had created specifically to prepare Lily for adoption, a way to console her when she knew they would have to separate. "She's remembering," Connie whispered. "My daughter is remembering." But Benny saw that as a final threat. If Lily was recovering her memory, soon she would remember everything she had seen in the orphanage. All the schemes, all the children who had disappeared, all the families destroyed. "Enough of the theatrics," he said, signaling to his men. "Let's settle this once and for all." It was then that the unexpected happened. On the other side of the street, a police car stopped abruptly, and 2 investigators got out who had been looking for Benny for weeks due to an anonymous report of corruption. The arrival of the investigators completely changed the dynamic of the situation. The older investigator, a 50-year-old man named Detective Ferreira, got out of the car with an expression that indicated he wasn't there by chance. "Benny Carvalho," he said, walking directly to the group. "What a coincidence to find you here." Benny tried to maintain his composure, but his henchmen were already showing visible nervousness. "Detective Ferreira, what a surprise. I was just visiting my partner." "Ex-partner," Richard corrected quickly, realizing that the situation had taken an unexpected turn. "Mr. Carvalho," continued the detective, "we have an arrest warrant for you for forming a fraudulent scheme, falsifying documents, and trafficking minors." The silence that followed was deafening. Connie squeezed Lily against her, finally understanding the extent of the nightmare she had lived. Valerie leaned on Richard, trembling with the confirmation of her worst suspicions. "This is a misunderstanding," Benny tried, but his voice no longer carried the same arrogance as minutes ago. "We received a detailed report 2 weeks ago," explained the second investigator. "Someone delivered documents, recordings, and enough evidence to support our investigation, including records of bank transfers and correspondence about special merchandise." Richard frowned. "Who made the report?" It was then that an unexpected figure appeared on the corner, Jacob Silver, the accountant who had worked with Benny on the embezzlement. He approached the group with an air of someone carrying a huge weight on his shoulders. "It was me," he said, his voice trembling. "I made the report." Benny turned to him with fury. "You traitor! You were with me in this from the beginning." "I was in the embezzlement," Jacob corrected. "But when I found out that you were selling children, when I saw you planning to harm an innocent child, I couldn't stay silent anymore." "And what made you change your mind?" asked the detective, interested in the testimony. Jacob looked at Lily, who was watching everything with big, curious eyes. "I have a daughter her age. One night she asked me why I came home always sad and nervous. I realized I was becoming someone my own daughter was afraid to disappoint." Benny tried to move away discreetly, but his henchmen had already been surrounded by the investigators. The operation had been planned with precision, and there were no escape routes. "Besides," continued Jacob, "I discovered that Benny wasn't just embezzling money from Montgomery's supermarkets. He was using the company as a front to launder money from the illegal adoption scheme." Richard felt his legs weaken. "My company was being used for this." "Without your knowledge," Jacob hastened to clarify. "Benny created phantom suppliers, inflated prices, invented purchases that never existed. The extra money went directly to offshore accounts linked to the orphanage scheme." The officer, who had remained silent throughout the confusion, finally spoke up. "Detective, we have here a child custody situation that needs to be resolved." "I know," replied Ferreira. "In fact, this child is one of the main victims of the scheme we are investigating, Mrs. Connie Silver." Connie stepped forward, still protective of Lily in her arms. "Yes? You were one of the mothers who had their children stolen through the orphanage. We have evidence that at least 15 children were illegally taken from their families in the last 3 years. 15? Valerie murmured, horrified. The scheme worked like this. They identified children from poor families or single mothers who worked at the orphanage. They created situations to separate parents and children, falsified adoption documents, and sold the children to wealthy families who couldn't adopt through legal means. Connie squeezed Lily tighter. "And when the accident happened, it was intentional. Benny discovered that the buying family had given up on the adoption at the last minute, but he had already received the money. He sabotaged the transport to buy time and invent a new story." "But Lily survived and lost her memory," said Richard, finally understanding the whole puzzle. "Exactly. And when she showed up here in Tulsa, Benny was worried that someone would make the connection. That's why he had you watched when he found out you had gotten close to her." Benny, who had remained silent during the explanations, finally exploded. "You don't understand. Those children were better off with the families who could pay for them. Connie worked as a cleaning lady. What future could she give her daughter?" "The future of true love," Connie replied firmly. "Something you never understood." At that moment, Lily broke free from her biological mother's arms and walked to Benny, who was being handcuffed by the investigators. She stared at him for long seconds before speaking. "I remember you now," she said in her small voice. "You made the mothers cry when you came to get the children. You said they were going to a better place, but I knew they didn't want to go." "It's just a child," Benny murmured. "She doesn't understand anything." "I understand that you are bad," replied Lily, "and I understand that my mother cried a lot when you took me from her." The girl's words touched everyone present. Little by little, her memories were coming back, and with them, the understanding of everything she had lost. Connie knelt beside her daughter. "Lily, do you want to come home with me?" The girl looked at Connie, then at Richard and Valerie. "Can I visit Mr. Montgomery and Ma'am Valerie?" "Whenever you want," promised Connie. "And can they visit me, too?" "Of course they can." Lily smiled for the first time since all the confusion had begun. "Then I want to go with you. But I want them to be my family, too." Valerie began to cry, but this time they were tears of relief mixed with sadness. She had found in Lily the daughter she never had, but she knew that the girl's place was with her real mother. "Valerie," said Connie, approaching her, "I don't know how to thank you for everything you did for Lily. You took care of her when I couldn't." "She brought light to our house," replied Valerie, "even for a short time." It was then that Richard had an idea that would change everything again. "Connie, where are you living now?" "In a rented room in the neighboring town. I work as a cleaning lady in 3 houses to pay the rent." "What if I offered you a job?" "At the company, after we resolve all this mess with Benny, a real job with a signed contract, decent salary." "But why?" "Because Lily saved my life, and now I want to help save the lives of you two." Connie was silent for a moment, processing the proposal. "And Lily could study at a good school, have medical care, and most importantly, could grow up knowing that she has an extended family that loves her." At that moment, while Benny was being led away by the investigators and his henchmen detained, a new family configuration began to form. It wasn't conventional, but it was based on love, sacrifice, and the determination to give a courageous girl everything she deserved to have from the beginning. 2 weeks after Benny's arrest, life in Tulsa had taken a turn that no one could have predicted. Connie Silver had accepted Richard's proposal and was living in a small rented house in downtown Tulsa, just a few blocks from the Montgomerys' residence. Lily divided her time between the 2 houses, gradually rebuilding her relationship with her biological mother, while maintaining the emotional bonds she had created with Richard and Valerie. But the transition wasn't easy for anyone. "Mommy, Connie," said Lily one morning while they were having breakfast at the small kitchen table, "why do you cry at night when you think I'm sleeping?" Connie almost dropped her coffee cup. In 2 weeks living with her daughter, she had discovered that the girl had developed a keen perception of adults' feelings, probably a defense learned during her time on the streets. "Sometimes adults cry because they are very happy," explained Connie, trying to smile. "But it's not happy crying," insisted Lily with the frankness typical of children. "It's crying from someone who's scared." Connie sighed. How to explain to a 4-year-old child that she was afraid of not being a good enough mother? How to tell her that she had spent 2 years idealizing the reunion, but now felt lost in the face of the reality of raising a daughter who had grown up without her? "I'm afraid I don't know how to take care of you properly," she admitted finally. "You grew up without me, learned to be strong on your own. Sometimes I don't know what my place is in your life." Lily put down the piece of bread she was eating and walked around the table to hug her mother. "Your place is here, by my side, just like the place of Ma'am Valerie and Mr. Montgomery. But I'm your real mother. It should be different." "It is different," said Lily simply. "You gave me life. They gave me hope. I need both." That same morning at the Montgomerys' house, a similar conversation was taking place between Richard and Valerie. Since Lily had gone to live with Connie, Valerie had sunk into a depression that not even the medication could alleviate. "I miss her," Valerie said, watching the empty backyard through the kitchen window where Lily used to play. "The house has become quiet again." "She's coming for lunch today," Richard reminded her. "And she'll sleep over on the weekend." "It's not the same. For 5 days she was our daughter, truly ours, and now she is where she always should have been, with her real mother." Valerie turned to him, tears in her eyes. "Don't you miss her? Don't you feel like we've lost a child again?" The question hit Richard hard. Of course, he missed her. He missed Lily's crystalline laughter echoing through the house, the curious questions she asked about everything, the way she waited for him at the door when he came home from work. But he also knew that doing the right thing wasn't always doing what was easiest for them. "I miss her," he admitted. "But Valerie, look at Connie when we found her. Destroyed, working 3 jobs, living in a rented room. If we keep Lily, we're stealing her chance to rebuild the family that Benny destroyed. What if we adopted a child, officially?" Richard stopped drinking his coffee and looked at his wife. It was the first time in 5 years that she had mentioned the possibility of having children again. "Would you like that?" "I don't know. Maybe. Lily showed me that I can love a child who wasn't born from me, that I can be a mother, even after what happened." It was at that moment that the doorbell rang. It was Nubia Ferreira, the social worker who had overseen Lily's case. She wore a serious expression that worried them both. "May I come in? I need to talk to you about something important." They sat in the living room, and Nubia got straight to the point. "During the investigation of Benny's scheme, we discovered something that might interest you. There are other children who were separated from their families and haven't been reunited yet." "How many?" Richard asked. "At least 7. Some are in shelters, others have been placed with families who didn't know about the illegal adoption. And there's one specific situation that concerns me." Nubia opened a folder and showed a photo of a boy of about 6 years old, dark hair, sad eyes. "This is Miguel. He was in the same orphanage as Lily, and he was sold to a family that lived out of state. But the family moved overseas and abandoned the boy here." "Abandoned how?" Valerie asked, already imagining the worst. "They left him at a shelter in Oklahoma City, claiming they could no longer care for him. The boy has no valid documents. We don't know who his biological parents are, and he has developed a deep trauma. He hasn't spoken to anyone in months." Valerie and Richard exchanged glances. They both knew where this conversation was going. "Nubia, why are you telling us this?" "Because you've proven that you know how to care for traumatized children, because Lily blossomed under your care, and because this boy needs a family that understands that love isn't about blood, but about choice." Valerie got up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see Connie arriving with Lily for lunch. The girl ran ahead, excited, while her mother followed with a smile that was becoming more genuine every day. "Can we meet Miguel?" she asked without turning around. "Of course, but there's one condition. If you decide to adopt him, it will be a long process, and he will need a lot of psychological support." "We can handle it," Richard said. "With Lily, we learned that patience and love can heal many wounds." At that moment, Lily ran into the house, followed by Connie. "Uncle Richard! Aunt Valerie!" she shouted, hugging them both. "Guess what? Mom Connie said I can learn to play the guitar." "That's great!" Valerie said, crouching down to the girl's height. "And do you really want to learn?" "Yes, so I can sing our song even more beautifully." Connie approached, carrying a bag with some toys she had bought for her daughter. "Richard, I wanted to talk to you about the job. When can I start?" "Monday, if you want. But first, we have a proposition to make." Connie frowned, curious. "How about we move you and Lily to a bigger house? I know one for rent 2 blocks from here. 3 bedrooms, a large backyard, perfect for a child." "Richard, I can't accept any more favors." "It's not a favor, it's an investment. In Lily, in you, in the family we're building together." Lily looked from one adult to another, realizing that something important was being decided. "Are we going to live in a big house?" "If your mom accepts," Valerie said. "And will you still be my family too?" "Forever," Richard promised. It was then that Nubia showed Miguel's photo to Lily. "Do you know this boy?" Lily studied the image carefully. "I know him. It's Miguel. He slept in the bed next to mine at the orphanage. He drew airplanes all the time. He needs a family," Nubia explained. "Like I needed one. Just like you needed one." Lily looked at Richard and Valerie seriously. "Can you take care of him too?" "He's very sad, but he's good. And so it was, with the devastating simplicity of a child who knew the pain of abandonment, that the decision was made. In less than a week, two families wounded by life's blows discovered that healing sometimes comes in the most unexpected form, through the love we choose to give, even when everything seems lost. The first meeting with Miguel took place on a rainy Thursday afternoon at the shelter in Oklahoma City. Richard and Valerie drove there, accompanied by Nubia, while Connie stayed at home taking care of Lily. What they found was devastating. Miguel was sitting alone in a corner of the covered patio, drawing furiously in an old notebook. At 6 years old, he was visibly taller than Lily, but his hunched posture made him seem younger than his age. When he saw the adults approaching, he instinctively closed the notebook and retreated further into the corner. "Miguel," Nubia said gently, "these are the people I told you about, Richard and Valerie." The boy did not answer, only watched them with distrustful eyes. His hair was badly cut, his clothes were clean but clearly donated, and there was a deep sadness in his face that broke Valerie's heart. "Hi, Miguel," Valerie tried, crouching at a respectful distance. "Can I see your drawings?" Miguel clutched the notebook to his chest, shaking his head negatively. "That's okay," she said. "You don't have to show me if you don't want to. Lily told me that you were friends at the orphanage." For the first time, something changed in Miguel's expression. His eyes widened slightly when he heard Lily's name. "You know Lily?" he asked, his voice hoarse from not using it for so long. "We know her," Richard replied. "She lives with us sometimes, and she talked a lot about you. Is she okay? Did they hurt her?" The question revealed the deep trauma that Miguel carried. At 6 years old, he had seen children being taken from the orphanage and never returning, developing a constant paranoia about what could happen to his friends. "She's very well," Valerie assured him. "She's living with her real mother, in a nice house. She's going to start studying at a good school." Miguel processed this information in silence. "And you? Are you going to take me away too?" "Only if you want to," Richard said. "And even then, it would be to our house nearby. You could see Lily whenever you wanted. Promise?" "Promise." Slowly, Miguel opened the notebook and showed his drawings. They were airplanes, dozens of them, some simple, others elaborate, but all flying towards what seemed to be a house with a happy family drawn in front. "Why do you draw airplanes?" Valerie asked, genuinely curious. "Because airplanes can take people home," Miguel replied simply. "I draw them to remind myself that one day someone will take me home too." Valerie felt tears welling up. "Miguel, would you like our house to be your home?" The boy was quiet for a long moment. "What if you don't like me? What if I do something wrong?" "We all do things wrong sometimes," Richard said, "but that doesn't mean we stop loving people. The family that adopted me before said I was very difficult, that I cried a lot, that I didn't obey." "You had reasons to cry," Valerie said firmly, "and crying isn't being difficult. It's being human." 3 hours later, they were driving back to Tulsa with Miguel in the back seat of the car, clutching his drawing notebook and watching the landscape with a mixture of fear and hope. The adoption process would take months, but Nubia had obtained permission for him to stay temporarily with the Montgomerys while the paperwork was processed. "Miguel," Valerie said during the trip, "are you afraid of anything specific?" "I'm afraid of waking up and finding out it's all a dream," he replied with brutal honesty. "It's happened before." When they arrived home, Connie and Lily were waiting for them at the door. Lily's reaction to seeing Miguel was immediate and touching. She ran to hug him, as if they were siblings who had been separated for years. "Miguel, you really came!" she shouted, jumping for joy. "Now we can play together every day." Miguel smiled for the first time since they had met him. "Lily, you've grown." "You too. And look," she took his hand and led him to the backyard. "There's space to run and play, and Aunt Valerie makes a cake that's the most delicious in the world." Watching the two children playing together, Connie approached Valerie. "Thank you." "For what?" for showing me that family isn't about having or not having. It's about choosing to love, even when it's hard, but not everything was resolved. That night, Miguel had his first nightmare at the Montgomery's house. He woke up screaming at 3 in the morning, calling for someone named Aunt Rosa. Valerie ran to his room and found him trembling under the covers. "Shh, it's okay," she said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "It was just a nightmare." "I dreamed that Aunt Rosa came back to get me," Miguel sobbed. "She said I was a bad boy and that no one would ever really want me." "Who is Aunt Rosa?" "The woman who took care of me in the family that adopted me. She yelled a lot and said that I cost too much to keep." Valerie felt a deep anger growing in her chest. How could someone say that to a child? "Miguel, look at me. You are not expensive to keep. You are not a burden. You are a gift. Like Lily. Exactly like Lily. You are both gifts that life gave us when we needed them most. But what if I wet the bed?" Aunt Rosa got very angry when that happened. "If you wet the bed, we'll change the sheets, and that's it. It's not the end of the world." Miguel looked at her with an expression that showed he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "And you're not going to give me back. Never. This is your home now, Miguel. Forever." The next morning, an unexpected scene awaited everyone in the kitchen. Miguel had woken up before everyone else, and using a chair to reach the sink, was trying to wash the sheets he had wet during the night. "Miguel, what are you doing?" Richard asked, finding the boy struggling with the heavy sheets. "I wet the bed," he said, lowering his head in shame. "Aunt Rosa always said that whoever messes up has to clean up." "Miguel," Valerie said, entering the kitchen and seeing the scene, "you don't need to do that. Come here." She took him away from the sink and hugged him. "From today on, if anything like that happens, you just let us know. We'll take care of everything." "But Aunt Rosa was wrong. Children wet the bed sometimes, it's normal, and adults who really love don't get angry about it." It was at that moment that Lily appeared in the kitchen, still in her pajamas, and saw Miguel crying. "Why is Miguel sad?" "He wet the bed and he's ashamed," Valerie explained. "Oh," Lily said naturally, "I do that sometimes too, especially when I dream about bad things. Then Mom Connie makes hot chocolate and tells me nice stories until I forget the nightmare." Miguel looked at Lily, then at Valerie and Richard. For the first time in his life, he was in a house where being imperfect did not mean being rejected. "Can I have hot chocolate too?" he asked timidly. "You can," Valerie replied, kissing his forehead. "And you can wet the bed as many times as you need to. We'll always be here to take care of you." And so, in a kitchen full of wet sheets and 2 children wounded by life, another piece of the unconventional family that was forming found its place in the world. 6 weeks after Miguel's arrival, the routine of the extended family had found its own rhythm. Connie worked in the office of Montgomery's supermarkets during the day, while Lily attended a private school where she quickly became beloved by the teachers. Miguel, still in the process of adapting, spent the mornings with Valerie, who had become his unofficial therapist, helping him overcome his traumas through simple activities like cooking, gardening, and especially drawing. But it was on a Friday afternoon that an unexpected discovery changed everything again. Miguel was in the backyard drawing his usual airplanes when Marlene arrived for a visit. The church volunteer had become a constant presence in the family's life, helping with guidance on caring for traumatized children. "Miguel, can I see your drawing?" she asked, sitting next to the boy on the grass. He showed her his newest creation, a larger and more detailed airplane than the previous ones, with several windows and a family drawn inside. "That's beautiful. And who are these people in the airplane?" "It's us," Miguel said, pointing to each figure. "Me, Lily, Uncle Richard, Aunt Valerie, Mom Connie, and you too, Aunt Marlene." "And where is this airplane flying to?" Miguel was thoughtful. "To a place where no one can ever separate us again." Marlene felt a pang in her heart. "Miguel, are you still afraid of being separated?" Sometimes, especially when I sleep. I dream that the bad man from the orphanage comes back and says that I have to leave. What bad man? The one who talked to the director and took the children away. He had a folder with papers and always said that the children went to better families. Marlene frowned. Miguel, do you remember what that man looked like? I remember. He was tall, had a big belly, and wore a really shiny gold watch. And he smelled like cigarettes. The description matched Benny Carvalho perfectly. Marlene stood up quickly. Miguel, I need to talk to Uncle Richard. Can you keep drawing here? She found Richard in the office, reviewing the company's accounting books, which were slowly recovering from the damage caused by Benny. Richard, I need to tell you something important. Miguel remembers Benny from the orphanage. What do you mean? He just described Benny in detail as the bad man who took the children away. Miguel could be a witness to the whole scheme. Richard dropped the papers he was analyzing. Marlene, Benny is in jail awaiting trial. If Miguel testifies, he could help convict Benny definitively, but it could also revive traumas that he has barely begun to overcome. At that moment, Valerie entered the office with a worried expression. Richard, an official letter arrived. It's from Benny's defense attorney. The letter brought news that chilled everyone's blood. Benny had been granted parole claiming health problems, and his lawyer was questioning the validity of the testimonies that incriminated him, especially Jacob's, claiming that they had been obtained under duress. He's going to be released? Valerie asked, pale. It's possible, Richard replied, reading the document. Unless new evidence or witnesses come forward. Miguel could testify, Marlene said hesitantly. But it would be asking too much of a child who can barely sleep at night without nightmares. It was at that moment that Miguel appeared at the office door, holding his drawing. Uncle Richard, what is testifying? The three adults exchanged glances, realizing that the child had overheard part of the conversation. It's when someone tells a judge important things they saw or heard, Richard explained carefully. And if I tell the judge about the bad man from the orphanage, won't he be able to hurt other children? Probably not, Valerie replied. Miguel was quiet for a moment, then extended his drawing to Richard. Then I want to testify, but I want you to stay with me. Miguel, Marlene said, crouching down to his level, testifying can be scary. You'll have to talk about sad things that happened at the orphanage. I know, but if I don't talk, the bad man might come back and take other children, like he took me and Lily. Miguel's courage impressed everyone. At 6 years old, he was willing to face his traumas to protect other children. Where is Lily? Richard asked, realizing that the girl might have important information as well. She's at Mom Connie's school, learning the guitar, Miguel replied. She said she's going to play our song in a performance. An hour later, Connie arrived with Lily, who was excitedly talking about her music lesson. But the heavy atmosphere in the house made her realize that something was wrong. What happened? Connie asked, instinctively protective of her daughter. Richard explained the situation, and Connie's face grew progressively paler. Benny could be released. It's possible. Unless we get more evidence against him. And you want the children to testify? We want them to have the option to choose, Valerie corrected. If they want to help convict Benny, we'll support them. If they don't want to, we'll respect that. Lily, who had listened to everything carefully, spoke up. I remember a lot from the orphanage now. I remember the man who made the director sign papers. I remember him talking about money. Aren't you afraid to talk about that? Connie asked. I'm afraid he'll come back and hurt other children, Lily replied simply. If I tell everything I know, can't he hurt anyone anymore? Probably not, Richard said. Then I want to tell too. Connie looked at the two children who, at 4 and 6 years old, were willing to face a collective trauma to protect others. If you two want to do this, I'll be with you. We all will be. It was then that Nubia arrived for one of her follow-up visits and found the whole family gathered in the living room discussing the situation. Actually, she said after hearing the explanation, I have news that could change everything. We managed to locate 3 more families who had children stolen by Benny's scheme, and they are all willing to testify. That means the children won't have to carry the weight of testifying alone, Marlene said, relieved. Exactly. But their testimony would be important to show the judge the real impact of what Benny did. Not just the legal aspects, but the human suffering caused. Miguel took Lily's hand. We'll do it together, like we've done everything since we met. Together, Lily agreed. That night, while the children slept, the adults gathered in the kitchen to plan how to protect Miguel and Lily during the upcoming legal process. They are braver than many adults I know, Connie commented, watching the 2 children sleeping peacefully in the room through the half-open door. Their courage was born from pain, Valerie said. They know what it's like to suffer, so they don't want other children to go through the same thing. And we're going to make sure they have all the support they need, Richard promised. But what none of them knew was that at that very moment, Benny was being released on bail at a courthouse in Oklahoma City, already planning how to silence the witnesses who could destroy his chance of definitive freedom. The news of Benny's parole arrived on a rainy Monday that seemed to foreshadow the dark days to come. Richard received the call from Detective Ferreira early in the morning, even before the children woke up. Montgomery, I need to inform you that Benny was released last night. High bail, but they got the money. How is that possible? He was involved in child trafficking. His lawyer is good. He managed to question several pieces of evidence, claimed irregularities in the investigation. We're going to have to rebuild the case from scratch. Richard hung up the phone, his hands trembling. How was he going to tell Connie, the children, Valerie, who had finally started to feel safe again? Who was that? Valerie asked, appearing in the kitchen still in her robe. The detective. Benny was released. Valerie dropped her coffee cup, the sound of the glass shattering echoing through the silent kitchen. He could come after the children? I don't know. Legally, he can't approach us because of the restraining order, but when someone like Benny wants something, restraining orders are just paper. At that moment, little footsteps came down the stairs. Miguel appeared in the kitchen, sleepy, followed by Lily, who had spent the night at the Montgomerys' house. Why is there glass on the floor? Miguel asked, immediately alert. Aunt Valerie dropped her cup by accident, Richard explained, quickly sweeping up the shards. Be careful not to step on them barefoot. But Miguel, with his sharpened perception developed during months of trauma, realized that something was wrong. You're scared. I can feel it. Lily approached Valerie and took her hand. Auntie, your hands are cold, like Mom, Connie's hands used to get when she had nightmares about me. The 2 adults exchanged glances. It was impossible to hide the truth from children who had learned to read between the lines of adult life to survive. Sit here, Valerie said, pulling chairs out for them. We need to talk about something important. It's about the bad man? Miguel asked directly. How do you know? Because every time adults get like this, it's because of someone bad who can hurt children. Richard knelt in front of the 2 children. Benny was released from prison yesterday, but that doesn't mean he can come here and bother us. There are laws that prevent him. But he can try anyway, Lily said, demonstrating a frightening understanding of human nature. Bad people don't care about laws. That's why we're going to have to take some extra precautions for a while, Valerie explained. You can't play alone in the backyard. You can't leave school without one of us. And if you see someone strange, we run and scream, Miguel completed. I already know how to do that. The naturalness with which the child spoke about escape strategies broke the adults' hearts. At 6 years old, Miguel had already internalized that the world was a dangerous place where children needed to be constantly alert. 2 hours later, Connie arrived for work and found the family gathered in the living room, clearly shaken. When she heard the news, her reaction was visceral. No, she said, hugging Lily tightly. I won't let him get near my daughter again. Connie, we're going to protect ourselves, Richard said. I've already called a security company. They're going to install alarms and cameras in both houses. What if that's not enough? It was Marlene who brought an unexpected solution. She arrived at noon with a proposal that no one had considered. I know a family in a small town in western Oklahoma that has a large, isolated house. They are trustworthy people. They have young children. You could spend a few weeks there while Benny's case is resolved. Run away? Connie asked. Not run away. Protect ourselves strategically. But what about the company and the children's school? Richard questioned. The company can run for a few days without you, and the children can study at home temporarily. Miguel, who had been quietly listening to the conversation, finally spoke. If we leave, Benny will think he won. He'll think he can scare other families too. Miguel, you're a child. You don't need to worry about these things. But I do worry, he said firmly. At the orphanage, I saw what happens when the bad guys win. They get even worse. Lily nodded, agreeing with her friend. Miguel is right. If we run away, he'll hurt other children. It was then that Nubia arrived with news that would change everything again. I got something important, the testimony of a nurse who worked at the orphanage for 3 years. She has physical evidence of Benny's scheme. What kind of evidence? Photographs, documents she kept, recordings of conversations, enough material to reopen the case on solid ground. And why didn't she come forward before? Because she was afraid. But when she heard that Benny was released, she decided it was time to speak up. Hope returned to illuminate the adults' faces. Does that mean he can be arrested again? It means we have a real chance to convict him definitively. But it will take time to process everything. How long? A few weeks, maybe a month. It was Miguel who made the decision for everyone. Then we stay. But we stay together, everyone in the same house, everyone protecting each other. Miguel, Valerie started. No, Auntie, I've run away a lot in my life. I ran away from the orphanage. I ran away from the family that adopted me. I ran away from my own nightmares. I don't want to run away anymore. Lily took her friend's hand. I don't want to run away either. I want to stay in my house with my family. Connie looked at her daughter, seeing in her a determination that she herself had lost long ago. If you want to stay, we stay, but we're going to protect ourselves, right? That afternoon, a real security operation was set up. Alarms were installed, cameras positioned, and a communication system established between the two houses. More importantly, the family made a courageous decision. They would all move temporarily to the Montgomery's larger house to stay together during the period of danger. It's going to be like a really long slumber party, Lily said, trying to cheer up Miguel, who seemed worried. It's going to be like a real family, Miguel corrected. Like I always dreamed. That night, for the first time in months, Miguel slept without nightmares. Not because there was no danger, but because he finally felt part of something bigger than himself, a family that had chosen to face fear together, instead of running away separately. But what none of them knew was that on the other side of town, Benny was meeting with people much more dangerous than his old henchmen, planning a revenge that would leave no stone unturned of the happiness that this unconventional family had built. The first week of intense cohabitation in the Montgomery's house revealed family dynamics that no one had anticipated. Connie discovered that cooking for 6 people was completely different from cooking for 2. Miguel developed a routine of checking all the locks before going to bed, and Lily became the natural mediator of the small conflicts that arose when stressed adults lived in a reduced space. It was on a Thursday that the situation took an unexpected turn. Valerie was in the backyard hanging clothes when she noticed a man standing across the street, watching the house. It wasn't Benny, but there was something about his posture that immediately alerted her. "Richard," she called softly, entering the house. "Someone's watching us." Richard went to the living room window and saw the man, a young man, approximately 30 years old, wearing casual clothes but clearly positioned to observe the residents. "I've never seen that man in the neighborhood," he murmured. "Should I call the police?" "Not yet. It could be a coincidence, But it wasn't a coincidence. Throughout the day, different people appeared on the street, always keeping their distance, but clearly interested in the house. A delivery man who took too long to find the correct address, a woman who pretended to walk a dog but stayed standing in front of the gate, a man fixing a car that was working perfectly. "They're mapping our routine," Connie said, watching from behind the kitchen curtain. "Seeing who comes in, who goes out, at what times. Benny is planning something," Richard agreed. It was Miguel who made the most insightful observation. At the orphanage, when they wanted to take a child, they always sent different people first to see if there was an adult taking care of them right. Then they sent the papers. "What papers, Miguel?" asked Marlene, who had arrived for lunch. "Papers saying that the child had to leave. The director always said it was an order from the judge." Nubia, who was present in the conversation, paled. "Miguel, are you saying that Benny might be trying to get fake documents to take you and Lily away from the family?" "That's what he always did. He had friends who made papers that looked real." The revelation sent everyone into a panic. If Benny managed to get fake documents claiming irregularities in the children's custody, he could show up with a seemingly legitimate court order. "I need to check if there are any ongoing lawsuits against us," Richard said, picking up the phone to call the lawyer. The call confirmed their worst fears. "Richard, a lawsuit has been filed questioning the suitability of Miguel's temporary custody. They claim that you don't have an adequate structure to care for two traumatized children." "Who filed the lawsuit?" "A child protection organization that I've never heard of, but the documents look official." "Benny," Valerie murmured. "He's using the system against us." Connie hugged Lily, who had started to cry as she realized the adult's despair. "My daughter, they won't be able to separate us again." "What if they do?" Lily asked, her small voice filled with terror. "What if I go back to the orphanage?" "That will never happen," Connie promised, but her own voice trembled. It was then that Miguel made a suggestion that surprised everyone. "We can go on TV." "How?" Richard asked. "Tell our story on TV. Show how well you take care of us. Then everyone will know that Benny's papers are lies." Marlene brightened at the idea. "Miguel's right. If we get media exposure, it will be very difficult for Benny to use fake documents. But exposing the children on television," Valerie hesitated. "It's better than letting them be taken away by lies," Connie said firmly. The next day, through Marlene's contacts in the local community, they got an interview with a journalist from Oklahoma City who specialized in cases of social injustice. Luciana Mendez arrived on Friday with a small team, sensitive to the need for discretion. "Are you sure you want to do this?" she asked Miguel and Lily. "You'll have to tell difficult things in front of the cameras." "We've already told difficult things to the judge," Miguel replied. "Telling more people won't be worse. And we want other children to know that they can find real families," added Lily. "Families that choose to love." The interview was moving. Miguel, with his premature seriousness, explained what it was like to live in the orphanage, how Benny sold children like toys, and how he found a real family with the Montgomerys. Lily sang her special song and showed drawings she made of her new life. "What do you want most?" Luciana asked at the end. "We want to stay together," Miguel said. "And we want the bad man not to be able to hurt other children anymore. And we want other lonely children to know that there are good people in the world," added Lily. The report aired on Sunday night and had an immediate impact. The house phone didn't stop ringing with offers of help, lawyers offering to work pro bono, and most importantly, other families victimized by Benny's scheme contacting them. "We did it," Connie said, reading messages of support on her cell phone. "The whole city is on our side." But on Monday morning, a black van stopped in front of the house. Two men in suits came out, accompanied by a woman with a clipboard, all carrying official documents. "Mr. and Mrs. Montgomery, we are from the Special Child Protection Services. We have a court order for the immediate removal of minors Miguel Santos and Lily Silva." Valerie felt the world collapse. What service is that? I've never heard of it. It was recently created for special cases. We have reports indicating that the children are being exploited by the media and placed in a risky situation. Connie stood in front of her daughter. You're not taking my daughter. Ma'am, resisting a court order is a crime. The children will be transferred to a specialized shelter while the situation is re-evaluated. It was then that Miguel did something that no one expected. He approached the men and asked calmly, "Do you know Mr. Benny Carvalho?" The men looked at each other nervously. "We don't know what you're talking about, boy. He taught me how to recognize bad people at the orphanage. You have the same smell as him. Boy, don't be insolent. And your papers are wrong," Miguel continued, pointing to the documents. "My biological mother's name isn't Santos, it's Ferreira. I remember because she told me before she left." Miguel's observation revealed that the documents were forged. The woman with the clipboard became visibly nervous. "Besides," said Lily, joining her friend, "I know how to read now, and here it says I'm 5 years old, but I'm 4. The errors in the fake documents accumulated as the children questioned them. Finally, the fake officials realized they had been discovered. "This won't be the end of it," one of the men threatened before leaving. "Yes, it will," said a voice behind them. It was Detective Ferreira, arriving with a team of real police officers. "Benny Carvalho, you are under arrest for document forgery, attempted kidnapping, and racketeering." Benny, who was in the back of the van in disguise, was pulled out in handcuffs, his plan foiled by the intelligence of 2 children who refused to be victims again. 6 months after Benny's definitive arrest, life in Tulsa had found a new normal that no one could have imagined at the beginning of everything. The Montgomery's house had officially become the home of an extended family that defied all conventions, but functioned with a harmony that impressed even the most skeptical neighbors. Miguel had been officially adopted by the Montgomerys after a process that became a model in the state of Oklahoma. At 7 years old, which he celebrated last month, he now drew not only airplanes but houses full of smiling people, flower gardens, and mainly families of all shapes and sizes. His nightmares became rare, replaced by dreams where he flew on airplanes that always landed at home. Lily, now 5 years old, officially divided her time between her biological mother's house and her adoptive parents' house, a situation that worked perfectly because all the adults involved had learned that love isn't possession, but shared care. She attended the local preschool in the morning and spent the afternoons learning guitar with a teacher that Connie had hired, with the decent salary she earned as an administrative supervisor at Montgomery's supermarkets. "Aunt Valerie," Miguel said on a Sunday afternoon while helping prepare the family lunch, "did you know that I don't remember what it was like before you?" "What do you mean, my love?" "I remember the bad things that happened, but I don't remember what it was like to feel alone. It's like I've always had a family." Valerie stopped peeling potatoes and hugged the boy. "It's because you always have, Miguel. It just took a little while for us to find each other." In the living room, Connie was finishing reviewing the documents for the Beatriz and Miguel Foundation, a non-profit organization that she had created with Richard to help other families victimized by schemes like Benny's. In recent months, they had reunited 17 children with their biological families and found permanent homes for 8 others who were in a situation of real abandonment. "Connie," Richard said, entering the room with an envelope in his hands, "an important letter arrived. It was from the district attorney's office informing them that Benny had been sentenced to 15 years in prison for child trafficking, document forgery, and racketeering. More importantly, the entire corruption network involving the orphanage had been dismantled, and its victims were receiving reparations and psychological support." "It's over," Connie murmured, tears of relief running down her face. "It's really over." "No, it's not over," corrected Lily, who had overheard the conversation while playing with dolls on the rug. "It's started. Our family has started." At that moment the doorbell rang, and Marlene arrived accompanied by a surprise that made everyone's heart beat faster. It was Jairo Mendez, the lawyer who had helped Connie find Lily, but this time he wasn't there on business. "I brought someone you'd like to meet," he said with a mysterious smile. Behind him was a girl of approximately 8 years old, curly hair, shy but intelligent eyes, holding a small travel bag. "This is Sophia," explained Jairo. "She was found in a situation similar to Miguel's, but we haven't been able to locate a biological family. She heard about you through the news report and, well, she specifically asked to meet the family that chooses to love." Sophia took a small step forward. "Sorry to bother you. I know you already have 2 children, but I thought that maybe—" She couldn't finish the sentence because Miguel and Lily had already approached her, taken by a protective instinct that they had developed with all the children they knew in a situation of vulnerability. "Do you want to be part of our family?" Miguel asked directly. "If you let me," Sophia whispered. Valerie and Richard exchanged glances, the same unspoken question passing between them. 3 children. Would they be able to handle it? Would they have the emotional and financial structure? It was Connie who made the decision for everyone. "Sophia, honey, how about you stay here today to have lunch with us? We can talk, you can meet your family, and decide if this is really what you want." "My family?" repeated Sophia, her eyes filling with tears. "Our family," corrected Lily, taking the older girl's hand. "If you want." The Sunday lunch turned into a spontaneous party. Sophia, initially shy, gradually opened up to the warmth of that unconventional family. She said that she had spent 3 years in different shelters, that she dreamed of being a teacher when she grew up, and that her greatest sadness was never having had siblings. "Now you have 2, Miguel said, serving himself more rice. "Me and Lily can teach you everything about being a family." "And I can teach you to play guitar," offered Lily. "Our song sounds better when more people are singing." At the end of the afternoon, when Jairo was preparing to take Sophia back to the temporary shelter, she made a request that melted the hearts of everyone present. "Can I sleep here tonight, just tonight, to see what it's like to be part of a real family?" "You can," Valerie replied without hesitation. "You can stay as long as you want." And so, in a house that had started by sheltering only a couple wounded by loss, now lived 6 people united not by blood, but by the daily choice to love each other unconditionally. That night, while the 3 children slept in the room that Miguel had insisted on sharing with his sisters, the adults gathered on the porch to process the changes in their lives. "Have you ever regretted it?" Connie asked Valerie. "Giving up the quiet life you had before?" "Never," Valerie replied without hesitation. "Before I existed. Now I live. And you, Richard? Do you miss the life of a successful businessman without extra responsibilities?" Richard looked through the bedroom window, where he could see the 3 children sleeping peacefully. Miguel with his drawing notebook on the nightstand, Lily hugging the new doll that Connie had bought, Sophia holding a photo of the family that they had taken in the late afternoon. "Connie, I was a rich man, but empty. I had money, but I had no purpose. Now I have 3 children who have taught me that true wealth is having someone to love and someone to fight for." "And we," said Marlene, who had stayed to help with Sophia's transition, "discovered that family isn't about perfection, but about persistence. About choosing to stay, even when it's hard." 6 months later, during the Christmas party of the Montgomery Silver family, as they had decided to officially call themselves, Sophia was performing her first song on the guitar, accompanied by the chorus of Miguel and Lily. The song was an adapted version of the song that Lily had learned with Connie, but now it spoke about 3 children who found a home through the courage to face the darkness together. In the makeshift audience in the living room were not only the parents, but also Marlene Nubia, who had become a friend of the family, Detective Ferreira, who visited regularly to monitor the children's recovery, and even some of the families who had been reunited through the Beatriz and Miguel Foundation. "You know what's most amazing?" said Lily, interrupting the song to make an improvised speech that made everyone laugh. "Is that when I was little?" "You're still little," shouted Miguel, provoking more laughter. "When I was littler," continued Lily with wounded dignity, "I thought family was just who was born together, but now I know that family is who stays together. And we choose to stay. Forever," added Sophia, who had developed an impressive emotional security in the months of unconditional love. "Forever," agreed Miguel, raising his glass of grape juice in a solemn toast. And there, in a house in Tulsa that had witnessed so much suffering and joy, a family built by the deliberate choice to love proved that the most beautiful endings in life are the ones we write with our own hands, one courageous decision at a time. Outside, through the window, the stars of the Oklahoma sky shone over a city where 3 courageous children had transformed not only their own lives, but the lives of all who were lucky enough to cross their paths. And in the house on the corner, the sound of laughter and music continued to echo through the night, living proof that even stories that begin with tears can end with the purest joy. If you liked this wonderful story, please comment. Your opinion is very important. And if you love beautiful stories, subscribe to my channel. I promise to make your day better with my videos.